Welcome back. Thank you so much for joining us. A businessman and author Letepe Maisela has written a children's book titled Thabo, the Computer and the Mouse, which he will be reading at the South African Book Fair later today. Maisela is the author of other books, I believe 4, and this is his first one for children. The book comprises of contemporary African stories, often with a focus for impressionable and knowledge-hungry young minds. Well, joining us in studio this morning is the man himself, Letepe Maisela. A very good morning to you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Ayanda.
Why did you then decide to branch out a little bit and write books mainly for children?
I'm a parent, and when I was in Soweto, my kids were growing up in the mid-80s, and I knew that the material that was available to them was the same, Eurocentric type of material, Goldilocks and the Three Bears, Cinderella. And I thought maybe, they require some sort of diversity to also have stories that are sourced from their own. And I started telling them stories out of my head. And to my amazement, they loved them. So it sort of spurred me on. And fast forward, maybe 20 years later, I said, those stories, actually my daughter said to me, Daddy, you just tell us those stories, where can I find them? Then I said, oh, you can't find them anywhere, they came from my head. So that sort of gave me a plan that I need to do something about this. So I started trying to remember some of the stories, 20 years back. And then I have to formulate new others to make up a book. There are about 10 stories in here. All of them are from my head. Nothing traditional, nothing African tradition, but all authentic South African. And I wrote these stories not just for black children. I wrote for South African children, black and white. Anybody who goes through this book will realize that this book is a South African book. And that was my targeting.
Something that my colleague said about 5-6 minutes ago, Sam Marshall at the Ripley's Believe It or Not tour, saying that how do we start to make children acknowledge or realize the magic that lies between two covers, of a book. And I suppose the first step is to make sure that the content of the book is something to which they can relate. So already when there's a Thabo, and whether you are Sally or you are John or you are Kamogelo, you know a Thabo. And that's already something that will say, oh, maybe this is something to which I can relate, something that I will understand. Is that the first step to perhaps making sure that our kids read?
The idea was to come up with homegrown stories that they can instantly relate to, that are not like, even if it's fantasy, is what you might call South African or African fantasy. It must be within the realms of the real life that they lead on a daily basis, you see. And another thing was that reading was becoming less and less fashionable because it competes with other medium like television, computer, the internet, and all that. And I thought it was time that we sort of try to woo our children back to the word, because there's nothing as powerful as the written word.
And to also encourage them, I think, to, take down little bits of their own experiences and hopefully breed future authors in the making. Let's talk a little bit about the kind of stories that are in there and whether there's a message. I know the political activist in you. What was that like to shelve that for a moment and write books? You've got books about rural areas. You've got books about, computers, as you said there, IT. So it's about everything. Is there a subliminal message that's in there that you just couldn't hold back as activist?
I just felt that in this country, when it comes to literature, for instance, whether especially black literature or black produced literature, you find that most of the time we don't really have children's, storybooks. And I thought it's a niche that I sort of wanted to develop try to look at children's literature and do something in that realm. The stories themselves, I mean, Thabo, for instance. Thabo is a typical modern, child who grow up in the computer age, who grow up in the internet age. They sit all day in front of TV, or either playing Wii or whatever games that they play on computer, or maybe surfing the net and all that. They hardly ever go out there and play physically. We grew up in the street, kicking ball, swinging and all those things. But our kids are different. But I felt that maybe they need to be wooed also to go to the outside so that they should exercise. You see, I always get amazed when I see parents coming to gym with their children. I say, the children shouldn't be here. They should be out there running around, black man party, playing soccer, playing basketball, doing things that we did as kids that were very physical and active and healthy, you see.
Unfortunately, we're going to have to leave it there. I do know that you will be reading at the South African Book Fair, so perhaps you can look him up there. Is the book available in stores?
The book is available. You can go to popular bookstores.
Bookstores, they are there. Okay.
You'll find it there.
All right.
And I'll be reading today at the book fair at about 11.
Wonderful.
I hope people check me out there.
Should come there, definitely. So all roads lead to the book fair. Let's find out how the roads are looking at the moment. Rob Byrne, good morning.